Welcome back to the Organizedpreneur podcast. This is the Launchpad. I'm your host, Aldreama Harper, and today we're talking about something that could absolutely change how your podcast supports your business, where strategy meets simplicity. So, we're going to be diving into a topic I'm very, very passionate about: how to turn your listeners into leads with one powerful strategy: lead magnets. That's right, lead magnets. And so, if you've ever felt like your podcast was full of great content, but not really moving the needle in your business, then this episode is for you.
Aldreama Harper, she ready and steady. Organized planner with a plan, never petty. Dropping gems, got my thoughts feeling heavy. Podcast launch pad where the dreams take flight. Entrepreneurial spirit out of sight.
So, recently I was in a session with one of my clients, and we were discussing a topic the topic of lead magnets. So she just recently launched her podcast. Actually, it's about, at the time of this recording, it's about maybe 3 months old, and it's doing extremely well. It's doing extremely well. In fact, with her very first episode, which was her trailer, she got more than 50 subscribers just with that first episode. And so, over the course of a few months, she's been organically getting more and more subscribers. As a matter of fact, just this past week, when I checked her analytics, she got like 10 subscribers in one day. So she's doing phenomenally well. So I'm super, super proud of her. But I noticed on her episodes that I was editing, that her call to action was just a little weak. And so recently in one of her sessions, I mentioned to her that, I think it might be time to change or give a stronger call to action. And it just so happens that that's what she wanted to talk about when she booked her session. And so we ended up talking about her call to action. More specifically, we talked about lead magnets. And so she had listened to one of the episodes that I was talking about regarding lead magnets, and she had a specific question about lead magnets. And that question was, what are they? Right? And so, that kind of inspired this particular episode today, because I can't assume that everybody knows what a lead magnet is. And in fact, even though, she's launched her podcast, we're just approaching the point where now it's time to implement a lead magnet into her podcast. Okay. And so, um, and I said, because what I told her was, I said, well, listen, I said, your podcast, your current call to action, it's okay, because, if all you want them to do is to just listen and subscribe, then that's okay. But I really think it's time to have a stronger call to action, because after a while, you just want to, turn up your game and have a much stronger call to action that includes having a lead magnet. And so now, many of you probably have heard of a lead magnet. It's not an uncommon term. In fact, it's a very, very popular term in the coaching space or in the online space. But for whatever reason, my client had never really understood what a lead magnet, was, and what it could do for her business. And so I don't want to assume that for you either. And so, if you haven't considered having a stronger call to action on your podcast, because I think that that's where it's most commonly misunderstood. that having a lead magnet in your podcast, related to your podcast, really is something you need to consider. Okay. And you need to consider that, especially after, if maybe not initially, but after you start getting some momentum. And like I said, just a minute ago, she's now getting a lot of momentum with her podcast. And so it's like, hey, it's time to implement some type of lead magnet in your podcast flow. So that's what we're talking about today. And that's what inspired this episode today. So, let's talk about what a lead magnet is and why it is important to your podcast. Okay. So, a lead magnet can be something that's free but yet valuable, a very valuable resource that you offer in exchange for someone else's email address. Okay. And what it does, it helps to build and grow your list, grow your audience, where you are starting to nurture the relationships that you have with your email list. And if you don't have an email list, this is the best way to start one, right? Because without a lead magnet, your audience, they hear your voice, they love your show, but they just kind of disappear into the internets, right? If you don't have a powerful call to action. And if all you have is, hey, listen to my next episode, it's coming up, that's great. However, at some point you want to have some type of lead magnet, particularly if you have maybe a coaching business and your podcast is there to support and help you generate leads and gather them and get them into your pipeline. And so it's a great way to stay connected and follow up and serve them even more deeply. So here's a question for you. What could you offer if you're listening to this episode or watching this episode? What could you offer to your audience that your listener actually wants? Because it's got to be something that they want. And if they're listening to you, they're subscribed to your podcast or what have you, they want at some point, they want something, not just to continue listening, although they will if you don't, give them a stronger call to action. But what do they want? So you can ask them, what is it that you would like, right? Would you like to hear more episodes or accomplish some type of quick win, which we're going to get into that here very shortly. So, what I want to do is just give you a few ideas or a few lead magnet ideas that really work beautifully for podcasters, especially if you're a service provider, a coach or consultant, and a strategist like myself. So, a simple checklist related to your zone of genius. Okay. Perhaps it's a short PDF guide with 3 to 5 actionable steps that will help them with a quick win, right? A quiz that helps to turn or helps your listener learn a little bit more about themselves, or maybe a swipe file or a script that helps them to save time. Maybe they are looking for a way to introduce themselves to other podcasters, right? They're looking to be a guest on their show and they just need a swipe file. They don't know how to introduce themselves. That would be a great script that will help them to save time. Okay. The thing is, you want to just keep it relevant and make sure that it naturally leads to what you actually offer. Okay. For example, a great lead magnet would be you could name it rather 5 calls to action that convert podcast listeners into clients. In fact, that may be my next episode and my next lead magnet. I just want you to stay tuned. But my point is, it doesn't have to be complicated, it just needs to be useful. Okay. Now, so next I want to talk about placement because that was one of the questions that my client had. Where should I put it? So, as far as the recording, when you're recording your episode, you should mention your lead magnet in your intro, your outro, and your show notes or your website or podcast page if that's where you host your podcast. You need to have your call to action or your lead magnet there so that it's easy for them to access. Okay, so again, you want that to be uh, you want to verbally introduce your lead magnet in your intro, outro, and have a placeholder or something inside of your show notes or your website. Okay. And so, or your podcast page, like I said. So, one of my favorite tips is to record a 15-second call to action, then drop it in every episode so that you don't have to repeat the process. You can, when you edit your episode using a software like I use Riverside, and as in fact, I'm recording this on Riverside right now, you don't need to re record it each time, right? Who wants to do that? So that's a way that you can save time. And so I don't want to assume that you already know that because the audience that I speak to are usually those who have never launched a podcast and are launching a podcast that relates to their business. And don't forget, your call to action should also sound like a helpful invitation. And it should be something that gives them a quick win. In other words, it should not be a sales pitch. Okay. So let me just give you a quick example that I would do if you were someone that was maybe a podcaster or you're a coach or a service provider or what have you. Um, and you can say something like, if you're ready to XYZ, download my free, you fill in the blank, right? Whatever that with whatever that lead magnet is, perhaps it is a checklist. Okay, so if you're looking to grow your list with your XYZ, download my free XYZ. Okay, put the link in there and then say something like, it'll help you get started in less than 30 minutes because people want quick wins, right? They want quick wins. All right, so here's a takeaway. Your podcast is a powerful tool, but without a lead magnet, it's like a store. It's like going to a store that doesn't have a door. You have amazing stuff in your store. You have amazing content. You have amazing, valuable content that you're sharing. You want to give your listeners a way to walk through the door and stay connected. Okay. Think about your most recent episode and think about what's the easiest, most helpful resource that you can create from that topic. That's your assignment. Okay. And whatever that is, that's your lead magnet. Now, if you're not sure where to start, I want you to check out a link in the show notes. So here's mine. If you're looking to grow your list, grow your business, then make sure that you check out the link in the show notes that's going to help you build a podcast funnel that brings in clients and grow your business. It's a free video showing you what I'm doing, how I'm doing it, and how you can do it too. All right. I would really love to support you. So I want to thank you for hanging out with me for the last few minutes. And be sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Until then, stay organized, stay inspired, and I'll see you in your earbuds real soon on the next episode. Okay.